if your buyer is paying £20,000-30,000 as a reservation fee,
their affordability is then constrained.
yes.
Really interesting.
And my wish, and I will get there on this, is that
I'm committed to helping you and answering all of your property-related questions. There's always a huge amount to cover, but at Move IQ, we really are committed to supporting you through that journey. But I'd be really grateful if you do find the content useful and valuable, then please do hit the subscribe button, become part of our community, and we'll continue to deliver. Meanwhile, let's get on with the interview.
Richard, very, very warm welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming in. And I was really keen to talk to you because over the last 12 months or so, I really have noticed what seems a massive increase in headlines and topics and people talking about auctions. But it is quite confusing because, well, let's kick off with it. Could you just try and describe for our audience the two different types of auctions? The modern method, the traditional method, because it's got to be confusing. Like, if we just kick off with that, and then we'll delve into each of them if we could.
that's a good place to kick off. And thank you for having me. So, different options available to sellers. You have traditional auction, which is an unconditional sale. So when the auctioneer drops the gavel, or when the electronic gavel falls, if it's an online platform, the buyer pays a 10% non-refundable deposit and they exchange contracts. It's a legally binding agreement at that point. And completion is normally 20 working days from the date of the auction or when the contract is formed.
So under the traditional method, the seller pays the auctioneer. That's the only person who's paying a fee.
Yes, although there can be some recovery of costs. So in the auction legal pack, there is on traditional auction, there's a document called the Special Conditions of Sale. And in that document, the seller can recover some money towards their auction costs, towards their legal costs, and for searches that may be included in the pack.
Right.
But in essence, the seller
Pays the fee.
seller pays the fee, the auctioneer is acting for them to get the best price.
Yep. Whereas
on the other method, you have a situation whereby you have a purchaser who is getting a reservation agreement. So it's an agreement between the buyer and the seller to exchange contracts within a period of time. And for that, the purchaser will be paying a fee. Now, there's multiple options out there in the marketplace, but as a rough guide, it's a minimum fee of around £6,000. Can be as high as 4.2%, including VAT, of the purchase price. So you're paying that in addition to your purchase price.
in addition, who collects that fee? The auctioneer, or the seller,
and the agent. That is their fee.
Okay. And at that point, so the gavel goes down, and that deposit, for want of a better word, actually that's confusing to call it a deposit.
It's non-deposit. It's a reservation fee.
Yeah. That fee is then paid.
Yes.
Is the sale conditional or not conditional at that point?
Conditional. So if it's you and I entering into that agreement, we have a fixed price. I have a time frame in which to exchange contracts. If I don't, I risk losing my reservation fee. It's normally going to be a significantly smaller sum of money than if you're buying on a traditional auction, which is 10%, and that's not refundable, and you exchange contracts and the penalties that could go with that. But the reservation fee is there to bind both parties together. And it gives everybody what they want at the end of the day, which is security. That's what most people are looking for in a transaction. They want to know that they've got the property that they've chosen. The buyer knows that they're not going to be gazumped, and the seller knows that they've got the purchaser locked in. So,
and the agent knows he's got his fee.
And the agent knows that he's got his fee.
Yeah.
And it's quite a substantial fee.
Yes. The buyer pays the fee, and then the conveyancing begins. So they haven't exchanged contracts as per the traditional method.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And is there a period of time to enable that?
Normally 56 days. And the idea is that it gives the buyer time to go and get finance.
Yeah.
That's what it was born out of, because it's quite difficult for a number of people to comply with traditional auction terms. So you exchange contracts, you've got to have your 10% deposit, and you need to be confident that you've got the balance of those funds to complete in time, otherwise the penalties are quite severe.
Yeah, so that's the bit that was traditionally scaring people off a little bit.
Yes, and it was hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yes. Whereas the modern method, Just talk me through those timings again. 56 days to exchange to complete.
That's an average. You have to look at each individual option that's out there,
Sure.
and that is the best consumer advice that I can give you to give to everybody is be absolutely sure you know what you're entering into.
Lovely.
The average is around 56 days from when your solicitor receives the paperwork from the seller solicitor.
So that's to exchange contracts.
To exchange contracts.
Oh, that's a decent period of time.
It is a good period of time, and you should be able to get finance if you require it
Yes.
in that period of time. And it gives you security as a buyer that you're not going to be gazulled.
Yes. So the seller is also involved in that contract, although they haven't paid a fee at that point.
The seller doesn't pay anything.
Right.
On most of those options, the buyer is picking up their fee, in effect.
Yes.
And this has seen the rise in the number of properties that are going to auction.
Because the sellers don't have to pay anything.
Very attractive
Yeah.
as a seller. However, you don't get nothing for nothing in this life. There has to be some kind of reduction in the price that you're going to get for your property, because if your buyer is paying £20,000-30,000 as a reservation fee,
Their affordability is then constrained.
yes,
Really interesting. And of course, that's why it's gathered in popularity. It gives everyone certainty. The seller doesn't have to pay a fee, and the buyer knows that they're not going to be mucked around, although it's cost them a bit of money.
yes, but you have to look at everything in
Yes, yeah.
So as a seller, you need to be confident that that's what you want. Are you happy for that fee that you would normally pay to be paid by your buyer? Because I'm old school. As an auctioneer, we charge our clients. So we are there to get the best possible result for our client. They're paying our fee. In this instance, the buyer is paying the fee. So you have to think, how motivated are the agent, stroke auctioneer, to get you the best possible price when the fee's not being paid by you? And if you understand that and you're told that at the beginning, then you can make an informed decision on that.
Last year, you told us that if you knew a sale or letting agent was a qualified member of a professional body maintaining high industry standards, you would choose them over an agent who was not. Well, agents who are members of Property Mark are not only regulated, but qualified too. There are currently over 18,000 members right across the UK, all adhering to a strict code of conduct and membership rules. And that is why we at Move IQ endorse what they do. To find your local agent, look for Property Mark and let them know I sent you.
Who is the agent advising? Who's benefiting from the agent's advice?
Well, I would say the buyer is going to be, because they are being paid by the buyer.
Yeah. So it's really kind of turned the whole system on its head.
Yes, it's about education. So I've been saying for many, many years, speaking at many conferences, and I've been given a very nice platform to do that, that when an agent or an auctioneer, any property professional meets their client for the first time, you have to explore all methods of sale. Because we're sitting here talking about auction, which is great. There's two different types of auction, but you've got a tender process. You've got sale by private treaty. And for you, as the seller, I need to understand your circumstances. I need to understand the property. And once I've got all of that information, I can then advise you on the best method of sale. It's not good enough to say, we don't do auction. We only sell by private treaty. And you'd be amazed how many clients come to us and say, we want to auction our property. So you have that discussion with them. And actually, that's not the best thing for them to do for a whole host of reasons.
Okay.
And we have to advise them.
Yeah.
And my wish, and I will get there on this, is that all agents, not just Property Mark members, but all agents, give their client all that advice at the beginning, and then they advise their client accordingly. It's not good enough to say, we'll just do it this way because that's very on trend at the moment, or I'm going to get a better fee out of that, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I am right, aren't I, that there has been an increase. There's a lot more chat about the different methods of auction, and that being available to all buyers and all sellers. It's not just investors. It's not just properties that need doing up.
Yes, I think if you look at what goes through traditional auction, You still need to sell your structurally compromised properties, your
It was very delicately put there.
you still need to have your flats with short leases or flats above takeaways, things where it's not going to be possible to raise regular finance on it. They need to be sold traditional auction because you're going to be selling to people who've got the financial capability to buy those. The best way to get your client the best result in the best time frame is to put them in a competitive environment, without doubt. But the other method, the conditional method of selling, does open the door to different types of sellers and different types of buyers. But interestingly, on traditional sales, we are selling more and more properties now to people who are going to be end users. They're going to live in that property themselves. And they have the financial capability to do that. And also there's a lot of funding out there that's available short term for purchases.
So, I mean, would you sell, are you seeing any first-time buyers in the auction rooms?
A few. It's probably seeing more families who are helping their children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, etc., to purchase. So maybe you've got mum, dad, grandparents assisting, so they will have the capability to buy the property on auction terms, and then once it's completed, then daughter, granddaughter, whatever, will then go and finance it through a regular lender.
And with the modern method, that opens the market to everyone. So
yes,
I suppose if you're a first-time buyer, you've got to have a fairly decent deposit in order to pay the agent's fee.
So on the modern method, the conditional product, you have to pay stamp duty on that fee as well. So if your purchase price is say 200, and the fee you're paying on top of that is 10,000. For HMRC purposes, that's £210,000.
Okay.
But it does give you the opportunity to go and raise your finance on these 56 days.
Yeah. So anyone can play that game.
Anybody.
Yeah. And any statistics on the take-up or the increase? How's business?
Business generally is very, very strong. The main London auction houses, they're probably running double this time this year as opposed to this time last year's figures.
What would you put that down to? Just the fact that it exists,
I think that there's a lot of landlords who are looking to exit the marketplace. That's been a trend for the last 24 months. It's not as attractive for a number of landlords as it was previously. Interest rates have gone up. There's a whole host of things going on there. And there's the leasehold and freehold reform act that's going to come into play. So a lot of people are hedging their bets there. Although interestingly, what's really popular to sell at auction, what's gaining really good prices, certainly from what I've been selling, flats with short leases. Vacant possession, flats with short leases, very, very attractive in the marketplace at the moment.
for investors.
But I think there's a rise in both types of auction simply because more and more people, both buyers and sellers, want security of sale and purchase.
And everybody wants transparency.
And transparency. Absolutely.
Which is what the market has lacked for so long.
Yeah. And I think that if you ask any seller what's the thing that frustrates them most, is that on a private treaty transaction, and I don't want to use terms all the time that people might not know. So private treaty, that's how most properties in this country are sold. You pick an agent, somebody makes an offer, and eventually at some point you move house. That's
all being well.
Yeah. And there's a whole load of stuff that goes on there. And if you've got a good agent acting for you, they'll try and make the process as painless as possible, but it's painful. And it's only ever going to move as fast as the slowest people involved in that process. However, auction, whether you're doing conditional or unconditional, there's a time frame set. Everybody knows the rules of the game. And people are bound together by an agreement or a legally binding contract, and money is put down. And once you elevate to that level, then those transactions tend to go through.
Richard, just to finish off with, I worry we may have confused people because we've talked about traditional, we've talked about modern, we've talked about contractual or non-contractual. Let's just tidy it up at the end if we can, just in case anybody is a bit confused. Which is which? Okay.
Traditional auctioneer
has a contract.
You exchange contracts at the close of the auction, pay 10% deposit, can normally complete 20 working days later. Then you have the modern method or conditional contract, where you're paying a reservation fee, and then you normally have a set time frame in which to exchange contracts, generally around 56 days. But check the terms of whichever one you're entering into.
Thank you. Finally, I'm going to ask you for some top tips, or just a top. If you're a buyer at the moment thinking about buying in an auction, what would your top tip be?
As auctioneers, we love it when people get carried away. I would say to you as a prospective purchaser, don't get carried away. Stick to your limit. You do your research beforehand. It's really, really important to do your due diligence before you go entering into either auction.
Yep.
Particularly if you're doing traditional auction. There is no going back. If you're the winning bidder, you're contractually bound in law. It's just the same as exchanging contracts on private treaty. If you don't complete, the penalties are high.
Yep.
So do your due diligence. I alluded to earlier, there's a document called the Special Conditions of Sale. Always look at that because that's where any monies that
read the small print
on completion.
Yeah.
Read the small print.
Top tips for a seller.
Listen to the advice of your auctioneer. It's what we do every day. And in order to achieve the best possible result, you need to make your property as attractive as possible. The more people who engage with your property, the more people will end up bidding. The more people that end up bidding, the better result you will get at the end of the day. I need 2 or 3 fills who decide they're not going to stick to that budget.
Yes, you need people to get carried away.
Yeah, you need to get people carried away. But yeah, if you listen to your auctioneer's advice, it's what they do day in, day out. They will set the guide price, they'll set the reserve price for you, and then you will get the best possible result.
Terrific. Thank you very much. It's great to hear how these systems evolve, and it is a kind of natural evolution of what's a very old method of auction. Is there anything that we're likely to see in the next year or two? Will it evolve further?
I think so. There's more players coming into the conditional marketplace, and this is because a lot of people have become frustrated and very frustrated by how long a private treaty transaction takes. Yeah. So it's a middle ground between the two. That's the great thing about the conditional contract. So I can only see that continuing to rise. That's what all the stats say for the last 12, 18 months.
Well, some of your auction houses are 50% up on what they were doing last year. That's an incredible stat. If I tell you the first time I came across it, it was rather embarrassing. We were filming an episode of Location in the East End. And it was a very hot market. And I'd lined this property up to show my buyers, on the Friday or something. And this was on Monday morning, I think. And they're right, we'll meet outside the house. Turned up and there was a sold board. The door was locked. There was no agent. So I called the agent going, I've got a viewing. He said, no, it's sold. I said, no, of course it's not sold. It might have gone under offer over the week. It was not sold. We've got a viewing book. Can you come round with the keys? And I've got my buyer's way. He said, no, it's actually sold because they'd done the modern auction and the buyer had put down the non-refundable deposit was gone.
They could have rung you before you went.
I know. It's deeply embarrassing. But that was the first time I came across it. But that was, I guess, part of the motivation for wanting to get you on the podcast to come and explain it, because it genuinely was done. The deal was done.
Well, I really do appreciate you asking me on. And for me, it is about education of the public, but as importantly, it's about educating the agents. The agents need to give their clients best advice. It's, as I said before, it's not okay if you don't offer all methods of sale to your client, because every client is different, every property is different, and only when you understand all of that information can you advise your client accordingly.
Wise words indeed. Richard, thank you. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.